So I measured around my rib cage and then I drew out a shape that I liked for the underbust corset. I wanted to do a lining on the bottom and top, so I just traced the bottom and the top of it and cut out thin strips. So I just took a sponge and started stippling some gold paint over the whole thing. I then added in some black to make a more metal looking effect. Once it was dry, I took some super glue and just glued on the top and bottom strip. Once it was dry, I just took some black paint and painted the edges and then just sort of smudged it to make it look a little bit more authentic and aged. I took the thickest needle that I had and then poked some holes through the backing to do the corset lace-up. As you can see, it was really difficult to get that size of a needle through the fake leather. I just used that same black suede string that I had, but you could use any kind of thicker string for this. I then just tied the ends of the strings. I found a photo online of a blade that I like the shape of, and then I traced it onto some foam board that I got at, I believe, Michael's for probably $1 or $2. I used an X-acto knife and sort of traced the outline of it, and then I took it off and traced it more precisely with a pen. And then I just cut it out with an X-acto knife. So what ended up happening was the handle was a little bit too heavy and it wasn't staying in the blade holster once I finished it. So what I would do is either use a paper-based air dry clay, or if you're not too worried about it being fragile, you can use the Crayola air dry clay over the whole blade. Or you can carve the blade out of the foam itself, which I'm not very good at. I don't have a lot of experience with, but this is just how I did it. So I just used some strips of clay and water and made a design onto the handle. I took a tool and drew some lines down the middle part of the handle to look kind of like wood. So I lost the footage where I shaved on the sides of the blade, but I just took an X-acto knife and sort of just started shaving the sides, and it doesn't have to look perfect. It's better if it doesn't. And then I just painted it with a coat of black paint and Mod Podge. And then I did a coat of silver over that. I painted the same black paint and Mod Podge over the handle, and then I used some mica powder and paint to make a bluish color, but you could also just use metallic paint or really any paint you want. I had these big glass cabochons laying around, so I just painted a color that I liked onto some paper and waited for it to dry and then glued the cabochon onto it to look like a jewel. Just used some gold paint to do some detailing on the handle. I just super glued the little jewel into the indentation I had made previously. I painted the middle part of the handle brown to look like wood. And then I used a few layers of Mod Podge over the whole thing to make it stronger and to seal in the paint. So I just used some leftover fake leather that I had laying around. I didn't end up having long enough strips, so I had to kind of cut strips and sew them together. You definitely need a thimble if you're going to be hand sewing fake leather. So I just sewed the 2 strips together. You can avoid this if you just have a long enough piece of fake leather. You could also avoid this altogether if you just went to the thrift store and bought a belt if you wanted to avoid having to sew a belt. I was just experimenting with wrapping some strips of fake leather around the blade to make a holster. I just brushed some black paint over the belt with a scrap piece of fabric to age it. Because I didn't have a long enough piece of fake leather to go around my whole body, I ended up taking some suede string that I had and sewing 2 pieces to each end so that I could tie it together in the back. So here I was just making the little mini potion holster. And I got these little mini potion bottles from the dollar store. So this is the backing of it, and I just glued down the edges to make it look better. I just put some jars over it to use as weights while the glue was setting. So I just cut another thin strip and just sort of measured it around the bottles to see what size I needed. After I measured the strip over each bottle, I just added a dot of super glue in between each bottle and pressed it down, and then sewed over that to help it stay in place. I then measured out 4 more strips to go under the bottles and cut them out, and then rounded off the edges with my scissors. And then I just super glued the flat end to the back and then the rounded end to the front. So then I decided to make some little mini jewels to go over each bottle. So I just used some nail polish and some paint, and then once that dried, I did a dot of hot glue to make a little jewel. I did this on tinfoil to see if it added a little bit of a shiny effect, but you could use paper too. And then I just super glued them on. I then aged it with some black paint. For a couple of the bottles, I just used tea bags to look like herbs because they are herbs. And then I made some potions with some gold mica powder and clear glue. You could also just use paint and glue, or paint and rubbing alcohol, as long as you glue down the cap of it. I've switched to using biodegradable glitter, so I'm just using up the last glitter that I have in things that I know will contain the glitter, hopefully for a long period of time, meaning that it won't get washed out into the ocean or waterways. I highly suggest switching over to biodegradable glitter. I ended up using some that I bought off of Etsy for my makeup for this costume. I'll link the Etsy shop in the description. The glitter is really pretty. And then I just mixed it with a little stick. I just used some dark blue paint and clear glue and a little bit of glitter and mixed it all together. And then I glued in the cork. So here I was making the little leaf purse. So I just safety pinned each side where I wanted to sew it. So I drew out a couple of different leaf shapes, and then once I had the one I wanted, I just cut it out. I then scratched out a leaf pattern and started painting it. So I bought a pack of these large snaps at Michael's and I just sewed them on. I sewed them the wrong way first, which I pretty much always do. So what I didn't do was show how I assembled the belt. I guess I was just not thinking, but I took the blade holster that I had made by just super gluing some little strips of fake leather around the blade, and I sewed that to the belt, and then I just super glued the potion holster to the belt, and I actually ended up just safety pinning the leaf purse to the belt because I got lazy. I then added some other shades of green to add some more dimension. And then I painted black around the edges and smudged it. So I then just took 2 white pillowcases and cut them to equal size. Here's a cameo from my cat. She's a superstar. I then just folded the top over both of them and sewed a space of about 1.5 to 2 inches to put some string through to make a drawstring. I then cut a small hole in the drawstring area and tied a piece of white braided string to a safety pin and pulled it all the way through the space, and then I finished sewing it up. I found this shirt at Goodwill for $7, and I bought this strip of brown spandex on Amazon for $12 and cut it in half and wrapped it around my calves. I just put a couple of braids in my hair, and I'm allergic to makeup, so I used activated charcoal as eyeliner and bio glitter from Etsy. And that's it. I hope you liked this video, and subscribe and like if you did.